بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، أحمده وأستعينه وأؤمن به وأتوكل عليه، وكفى بالله وكيلا. ثم أصلي وأسلم على خاتم أنبيائه وأفضل سفرائه، المحمود الأحمد المصطفى الأمجد أبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا، سيما بقية الله في أرضه وحجته على عباده، المهدي المنتظر فداه أرواح العالمين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين. آمنا بالله، صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. We live in a truly mesmerizing age. An age where information is accessible to everybody. In fact, someone had said that any average person with an internet connection has access to more information that was available to the President of the United States of America 40 years ago. It's truly a time to be alive. You have so many opportunities. But at the same time, this availability and accessibility to information has also opened the space for misinformation. We are in the presence of scholars, and I'm sorry to have to mention things like that. But in term logic, they talk about two types of ignorance. One ignorance is known as al-jahlul basit, or simple ignorance. And that is when somebody is ignorant. And when I say ignorant, I mean somebody doesn't know something. However, they acknowledge the fact that they don't know this piece of information. And so they are aware of their ignorance. This is known as simple ignorance. There is another type of ignorance known as al-jahlul murakkab, or compound ignorance. And this is when somebody doesn't know something and they don't know that they don't know that something. With social media, anyone who sees a 40-second clip on TikTok thinks that they now hold the keys of knowledge. With a short reel on Instagram, you feel like you know everything there is to know. about this science. And this is a huge problem. There are, of course, individuals and corporations who abuse this feeling within us to make us think we know when in fact we don't know. And this is why it is absolutely crucial for us to understand our environment and our time. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says in a hadith, "Al-alimu bizamanih la tahjimu alayhi al-lawabis." Someone that recognizes their environment and recognizes their time and the world around them will not fall in the pits of trickery. In another hadith, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam says, "Kafa al-mar' min irfanih, afwan, hasbu al-mar'i min irfanih, ilmuhu bizamanih." It suffices if someone understands their environment, even if they don't have a lot of knowledge, they didn't go to university, at least they understand the world around them. Why? Because then they can do some risk assessment. If you happen to open up Facebook Marketplace and you see somebody selling an iPhone 14, 2 terabyte, deep purple, Pro Max for £200, and they claim that it's unopened, you think to yourself, hang on a minute. Yes, maybe this person is just dumb for selling an iPhone at this price. But at the same time, there's a very good chance that this is a scam. And so once you understand the environment around you, you understand that Facebook Marketplace has a lot of scams, that way you could do proper risk assessment. And so it's absolutely necessary for us to understand the world around us. At the time of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, if I'm not mistaken, Abu Muslim al-Khurasani, who was a rebel back then against the Umayyad Caliphate, sends a letter to Imam al-Sadiq, and he tells the Imam that I am at your service, I am willing to help you overthrow the government. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, "Ma anta min rijali, wala zaman zamani." You are not from the people that I can trust, and this time is not my time. So you understand your time. And this is why we follow the ulama. The ulama understand their time. They know when to be silent. They know when to speak out. Anyway, so it's absolutely important for us to understand the world around us. And in fact, in a beautiful hadith, in which Humam, who is one of the companions, from the righteous companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, gets up and tells the Imam alayhi salam, he says to him, "Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, صف لنا المؤمن كأننا ننظر إليه." I want you to describe to us what a mu'min is, the different characteristics and attributes and qualities of a mu'min. But I want you to be so specific and mention it in great detail as if we are looking at him. People that read books generally like to read books and don't like movies as much. So if you ask anyone who's read the Harry Potter books, they'll tell you that the book is better than the movie adaptation. The same goes for Dune and all the other books and movies. Why? Because you might miss a detail or two in a movie. So you might not notice, for example, the color of the shoelace of the shoe that they're wearing. But in a book, because it's printed, you will read about it. You'll imagine it. And so he says to Amir al-Mu'mineen, I want you to tell us the qualities of a mu'min as if we are looking at him. I want myself to imagine the mu'min with all of these qualities and attributes. The first thing that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam says, and keep in mind, the first thing that you mention is the most important detail. So if I ask you about the new car that you've bought, and I tell you what are all the different gadgets that your car has, if you tell me that in the glove box there's a coin holder, then that's not very smart of you, because that's not what you start with. You start with the best thing. It has a 15-inch screen, it has this, it has that. Amir al-Mu'mineen starts with possibly the most important attribute of a mu'min. He says, هو الكيس الفطن. A mu'min, and the way that Amir al-Mu'mineen has worded the sentence is very interesting. He doesn't say هو كيس وفطن. He says هو الكيس الفطن. Now before I translate, I'll give you an example. If you ask me about Abud, and I tell you Abud is a gentleman, that has one meaning. But if I say a gentleman is Abud, it means that Abud is the epitome of who a gentleman can be. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, هو الكيس الفطن. A mu'min is none other than one that is smart and savvy. You cannot be a person who is unaware of their surroundings, of the world that they live in, all of the problems and the trickeries in this world, and be a mu'min. You have to be aware. You have to know what's going on around you. In fact, in one hadith, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam says, صاحب حرب إنما لم ينم عنه. If you are in a state of war, then keep in mind that if you fall asleep, the enemy does not fall asleep. A mu'min is always in a state of war, either with themselves, with their nafs, or with the shaitan, or with an external enemy. And so you have to be aware all the time. You need to have awareness all the time. You need to know what's going on around you. A mu'min is smart, he's savvy, he's aware. Now, what are you supposed to be aware of? In a beautiful hadith, I want to recite the entire hadith. I want to mention the hadith in its entirety, but I only want to focus on one part of it. I'll first mention the hadith so we can all benefit from it, and then I'll focus on that part. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says that one day my father, Zainul Abidin, took me and he gave me some advice. And that's something great that you can do. As a father, if you have some life advice, give it to your sons. They can make use of it. They can benefit from it. Imam Zainul Abidin says, listen, there are 5 groups of people that you should not associate with. They're not good for you. They're toxic. Who are these groups of people? The first group that the Imam alayhi salam mentions are the liars. He says, beware of the liars. Do not associate with these friends who are liars. Why? The Imam says, Naam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says that a liar is like a mirage. He will make things that are very far from you appear to be near to you. And he will make things that are near to you appear to be very far away. Imagine this, you have a friend, you ask him, I'm craving pizza. What do you suggest where do you suggest we go to? He says, you know what? Come to my uncle's place. He's got the greatest pizza. And you eat it, and it tastes like freshly cut cardboard. This person is looking for his own best interests. The Imam alayhi salam says, steer away of the liars, because they're not good for you, they're toxic. Then the Imam says, you should also stay away from another group of people, al-fasiq, someone who has no morals, someone who doesn't care about crossing a few red lines. Why? The Imam says, فَإِنَّهُ بَائِعُكَ بِأَكْلَ. He will sell you out for a single meal if he needs to. People are sellouts. The Imam says, beware of these people. Then the Imam says, وَإِيَّاكَ وَمُصَاحَبَةَ الْبَخِيلِ. Beware of stingy people. Do not associate with stingy people. Why? Because why do you want a friend? You want a friend that you can depend on. But when you have problems, at times of great need, you call that friend of yours and you say, you know what, I need 3,000 pounds, I'm doing something, I don't have money, I'll pay you next week. They say, you know what, I need to talk to my accountant. The Imam says, steer away of stingy people. They're not good for you. Then the Imam says, إِيَّاكَ وَمُصَاحَبَةَ الْأَحْمَقِ. Beware of the imbeciles. Now these people, maybe they have noble intentions. They don't have malicious intentions. But even if they want to help you, they will harm you. Imagine if you ask, if you're in a flood or a river and you ask someone who doesn't know how to swim or save you to save you from this river, they'll probably drown you. Then the Imam alayhi salam mentions the final group. He says, إِيَّاكَ وَمُصَاحَبَةَ قَاطَعَ الرَّحِمِ. Beware of associating with someone who severs their kinship. فَإِنِّي وَجَدْتُهُ مَلْعُونًا فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ فِي ثَلَاثَةِ مَوَاضِعٍ. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has cursed the person who severs their kinship in 3 of Quranic verses. Now, I want to focus on the first group of people, the liars. We have to understand, brothers and sisters, that there are a lot of liars and lies all around us. And we're not talking about 3- and 4-year-olds here. We're talking about industries. We're talking about individuals who have perfected their ways. We're talking about corporations who do this for a living. You have to beware. Do not believe in everything that you see online. Do not believe in an article that you read in a newspaper. Do not believe a scientific research paper immediately. And I'll give you a few examples. You expect people to lie, and that's fine. Well, it's not fine, but I'm saying that you expect it, but then you see people lying that you wouldn't expect. I don't know if you've heard this. I've said it before. Maybe you have. If you've ever been to a doctor, they ask you about your hydration. Do you drink water? Because apparently drinking 8 glasses of water is good for you. But when you look into this and you find out that the companies that fund this research paper were Nestle and Dasani, you think to yourself, okay, is this a conflict of interest? Because I guarantee you, Nestle and Dasani are not willing to spend tens of millions of dollars on research papers whose results go against their business model and their product. And so you need to be careful. You need to be careful about your surroundings. Now, I'll mention a few examples actually, because I've written these down. Whether you accept the argument on drinking water and whatnot, there are a few that have been established as lies. In the 1960s, articles were published in reliable newspapers and journals. One of them in the New England Scientific Journal, talking about how sugar was not to blame for all of these sick people in America, but rather it was fat. 56 years later, it turns out that a corporation was funding these research papers. How can you believe anything anymore? The Quran has a set criteria. إِن جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. If an immoral and corrupt person, whoever that person may be, if they are not moral, if they're not decent people, then you need to look into it. I don't care who you are. I don't care what type of credentials you have. But as long as this person, it's been established that they are immoral, then you can't take their word for it. And this is the case with all of these corporations in this day and age. I used to think, for one, that baby shampoo is better than normal shampoo because it didn't have all of these chemicals. As it turns out, Johnson & Johnson, the big corporation that everyone knows, produces baby powder as well. This baby powder contains talcum powder, and it's been established that talcum powder causes cancer. Now, when the shareholders came to the company in America, and they said, you know, it's not good for our image that we are killing babies with cancer. It's not good for our look, and so you have to do something about it. They did the right thing, and they said, you know what, that's true. We will not be selling Johnson & Johnson baby powder in America. However, we will be selling it in other regions for a few years. These are the people that we're dealing with. Kent, the company that sells cigarettes, in the 1950s came up and introduced a new type of cigarette that was supposed to be healthier and supposed to have a better filter. You know what the filter is made up of? Asbestos. So this is who we're dealing with. That's why when you hear something, whether political or otherwise, think to yourself, can I rely on this piece of information? Or is there an industry behind this? Is there someone that is benefiting from what I'm hearing? Social media, we've all heard about the algorithm and things like that. This is media we're talking about. People are paying massive amounts of money. There's an individual, I encourage anyone to read about him. His name is Edward Bernays. He is known as the father of public relations. His job was propaganda, and you should read about him. He caused a coup d'etat in one of the South American countries in favor of the Chiquita brand that sells bananas. These are the types of people that we're talking about, causing death of God knows how many people for the sake of money. And so this is why a mu'min, A, doesn't take information from just about anybody, and B, is careful about what he hears. And this is something that isn't new to this world. It's always been like this. Fir'aun said to his people, لا أريكم إلا ما أرى ولا أهديكم إلا سبيل الرشاد. I do not present to you except the things that I've been presented with, and I do not guide you but to the right path. It's always been like this, but now it's been refined. Their ways are new. It's more accessible to everybody. One of the things that Yazid ibn Muawiyah did was make great use of the media to turn the people of Kufa against Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Yazid ibn Muawiyah was against Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. He didn't like Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. However, once he realized that the governor of Kufa is weak, he asked the advice of his father Muawiyah's advisor, who told him to put Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad in charge of the governorship of the city of Kufa. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad came, and he knew he was not welcome in the city of Kufa. When he came, he had covered his face. He came, people thought it was Muslim ibn Aqil. They welcomed him, they cheered for him. He came and he went into the castle. Then they realized that this is Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, but it was too late because he had closed the doors of the castle. They couldn't storm in. After that, Muslim ibn Aqil came. When Muslim ibn Aqil came, people started to gather around him. They all went to the mosque, and the mosque was full of people. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad didn't like this. Keep in mind that at the time, there were only 50 people in the castle with him. 30 people of his guards, and 20 people of the noblemen, and his first degree family. So there are only 50 people. Against who? Against at least the 30,000 people that came from the city of Kufa to fight Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. 50 people. What he did was very smart. He brought all of the different people from the different tribes in the city of Kufa. Back then, a tribe was like a family. You did everything with your tribe. You ate with your tribe, you played with your tribe, you protected your tribe at all costs. And so if you happened to be from a noble tribe, then you had a lot of honor. He sent a few people around. One of them was Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath, la'natullah alayh, and other people. Each one was designated to go to his tribe and to try to convince them not to support Muslim ibn Aqil. And it worked. It worked to the extent that it trickled down to the women and children. A woman would come to her husband and say, do not go because it's scary. There is a massive military that is coming from the city of Damascus. And guess what? The military from Damascus never even showed up. There was no military in Damascus. When Muslim ibn Aqil was waiting, it was around the time of Salatul Maghrib, the masjid was packed. Suddenly there was all this chatter between people. Don't go, don't stay here, it's dangerous, it's not good for us. One of the things that they also passed around was this slogan, مَا لَنَا وَالدُّخُولِ بَيْنَ السَّلَاطِينَ. This is a fight between Hussein and his cousin Yazid. Why are we involved in this? When in fact it's not this. It's al-amr bil-ma'ruf, it's al-nahi an-al-munkar. Anyway, so they all went to their people and they started to discourage them from supporting Muslim ibn Aqil. Muslim prayed his Maghrib prayer. After he concluded prayer, he looked behind him. Before he prays, the masjid was packed. He concluded prayer, there were only 100 people. He left the mosque. At the gate of the mosque, he looked behind him, there were 10 people. As he left the mosque and went into the alleyway, he looked behind, there was no one behind him. This is the power of the media. Not only did they discourage Muslim ibn Aqil, people from supporting Muslim ibn Aqil, but then they supported the killing of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. He walked in the alleyways of Kufa, completely abandoned, having nowhere to stay. He's a foreigner. He comes and he sits on the doorstep of a house. A woman comes out. What do you want? Why are you here? I don't feel safe with you here. He says, I'm thirsty. Can you give me a glass of water? She goes and she grabs a cup of water. She gives it to him. He drinks. He stays there. She says to him, why are you here? I don't like having foreign men sitting on my doorstep. I don't feel safe with you. He says to her, to be honest, I'm a foreigner. I don't know anyone in this place. She says, who are you? He says, I am Muslim. She says, you are Muslim ibn Aqil, the nephew of Amir al-Mu'mineen. She brings him inside her house. She gives him refuge as a Muslim would. But then she had a wicked son who went and told the authorities on him the next day. Next day, Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath comes out. Muslim ibn Aqil comes to fight them. يقل لها يا يقل لها وعينه مستديرة يا أنا لا أهل عندي ولا عشيرة غريب وعمامي بغير ديرة ومثل حيرتي ما جرت حيرة أنا المسلم الفاجد نصيرة. He fights them until they dig up a hole. He falls in the hole, bloody all around his face. من داريت عليه القوم ومن صاريت عليه لما كون حسين لو عباس يسمعنا يا اخوته ويمه ومن ضربوا على راسه وجسمه تخايا بدمه، مثل ما خضبوا بالديم يرد هم خايا الضب بدمه. يا مسلم وين ذاك اليوم عمك يجيك يعاينك غارج بدمك، وحيد ومحد من الناس يمك، غريب بهالبلد مالك تجي يا مسلم وين ذاك اليوم عباس يجيك بمشيته مفرع الراس. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك بأحب الخلق إليك بمحمد وعلي وفاطمة والحسن والحسين أن تصلي على محمد وآل محمد، وأن تعجل في فرج مولانا صاحب الزمان، به اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا، اقض حوائجنا، اشف أمراضنا ومرضانا، ارحم به موتانا، وإلى أرواحهم وأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات، لا سيما آية الله العظمى السيد أبي القاسم الخوئي رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة قبلها الصلوات.